your image broadcast, then turn your YouTube or your video off. But hopefully you'll be able to keep your video on so we can see you and interact during the session. I'd also like to note that we have the Zoom chat, so hopefully you're familiar with that. If not, it's in the Zoom menu down at the image broadcast. Then turn your YouTube. Whoop, that's me broadcasting to everybody that I'm. Okay, so we have the chat, and we encourage you guys to open up the chat and say hello to each other. That would be awesome. So what I'll do now really quickly is just kick off the session, and then I'll hand it over to Howard. Right, so want to let you all know that our norms for Wednesday Web Jam are really this is a session that's all about welcoming you as clumsy innovators, compassionate facilitators, cheeky co-creators, ignorant experimentalists, hungry learners, and change makers to join us in these sessions where we share and learn from one another and experiment with various different topics. We've been going for well over a year. We're coming up almost on 2 years. In March of next year, we're on session 83, and super happy to be able to do this together. And our motto is failing forward. There is no other way. And what we do like is to make sure that everybody is kind to one another, that you're nice to one another, and that you're empathetic. And so this is a safe space that we've created, and we ask that you all respect that and respect one another. But we will learn together as we go forward. So that's all we've got for the kickoff. And I'm really pleased to announce my friend Howard Mijares, who will be talking to us today about service design sense making. And this is a really interesting topic for everyone, particularly for people who are involved in design thinking and innovation. Service design is one of those things that is still somewhat of a nascent practice. It's not as well recognized as product design, but it's pretty much a sister methodology to that, and also a sister methodology to design thinking. And fascinated to hear about Howard's journey, literally as he took journeys to different cities, and he's going to talk to us about that whole service design journey. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Howard. Stop my screen sharing, and Howard, you can take it over. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Well, tonight in Dubai, and my assumption is afternoons, mornings, or early mornings elsewhere in the world. Let me just set up the slide. Can everybody see my slide now? Thumbs up if you can.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Okay, cool. So first off, just to start things, I just want to say you look awesome. And can you do me a favor and give a SHAKA to everybody? If you don't know what the SHAKA is, this is a SHAKA. I was a former surfer. I don't surf anymore, but I do street skate a lot. And what I want you to do is go for a screenshot of that SHAKA. Yeah, because we're going to be doing a lot of screenshots, given that there's a lot of content, and I want you to get as much content as possible. At the end of the session, it's either Mark or myself will share a couple of leads that I created at Evernote. So we're going to be sharing. In other words, don't worry if you miss something out, because you could have a go at checking it out on YouTube again, or go for the leads that we're going to be sharing with you. Okay, cool. To start things off, a little bit something about myself. I'm Filipino. I'm originally from Manila, and I've been living in 5 different cities. So I love cities, and I am a progressive designer. I used to be a multimedia designer, moved on to design thinking, UX, and now I'm currently as a experience design consultant and service designer, but I'm an explorer at the end of the day. Hence, I got influences of this school in the United Kingdom. This is us trying to be limber in the middle of the day, and so that's just a snippet of me being experimental, and that's that whole trigger point. Why am I exploring service design and holistic services design at that? Because in 2018, I just told myself that this is not just the service design that the literature is talking about. So I went on that path of being an experiential learner, an experimental learner, and I went about the teachings of David Kolb. He's basically this American academic who invented the learning spiral. So if you do see, by the way, a icon on your top right, the yellow camera bit, that's a signal for you to take a screenshot. Okay, so this academic professor had developed the model of the learning spiral, and that's basically how I go about learning through the industry. We're learning through the profession of service design, product design, design thinking, and I just wanted to share those early influences. Okay, but I just want to ask the room, what is service design to you, or what does it mean to you? So if I could ask all of you to type that out within the chat, what is service design to you? And don't type it out all at once. I'm going to tell you go. So let's give it like a good 10 seconds and type out what is service design. I'm going to do it as well. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, cool. 1, 2, 3, go. All right. Designing human-centered design, delivery of services, end-to-end experience, including touch points, visible and invisible systems. That's awesome. Yeah, explore the need of customer, design and improve the service step by step. Cool, cool. All right. Any more? Service design, service experience design. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. All right, cool. Next, I just want to share with you what is service design to the interaction design foundation. So service design is a process where designers create sustainable solutions and optimal experiences. Let's have a go at the service design. Okay. Service design is the practice of designing services. Okay. The reason why I just wanted to share that, it's because service design nowadays tend to be like a buzzword like CX design, EX design, and we just wanted to have better context. So at the end of this session, I would like you to export the chat as well, because there are a lot of mini insights that you can use as well. Okay, for me, service design, I got to know of it through this book of Mark Stickdrom. This is service design thinking, while I was working in Singapore. And I was designing a on-site touch point of a telco service at Bugis Junction, and I came to know of his stuff on YouTube, read his literature, then moved towards to this service design doing. And the book on the left, How to Be an Explorer of the World, was actually shared by Lauren Curry, a prominent design leader in Scotland. I was looking on her Instagram, and she had shared this. So just to put it back in context, I was searching for higher service design. Okay, and I had this hypothesis of there must be higher forms and practices of service design beyond from my practices in Singapore, in the UAE. I was at this time practicing as an experienced designer at Emirates Airlines. And I said to myself, like, look, there's more to this. There's more to this because there's a lot of content that's coming out on Medium. There's a lot of content coming out in YouTube, but I can't effectively learn not being immersed with them. So I came up with a how might we. So my how might we is how might we explore global service design to grasp a better comprehension of the design discipline, so that in doing so, we could improve designing for everyday services. And that brought me to Dublin in 2018, actually. And then it was the first time that I've actually gone being in present at a service design network, global service design network conference. And one of the talks that really struck me is Alok Nandi's talk on design configurations and narratives. And he had shared on him this powerful slide. This is the most powerful slide that I saw. It said, to effectively do service design or to be an effective designer, you have to apply sense making. If you have that ability and technique of sense making, you're in a position for change making. Okay, so sense making stuck to me. Okay, I got really inspired off that trip. Drank a lot of Guinness, obviously, but yeah, the inspiration stuck, and I carried on traveling the world in search for higher service design. Now let's try to explore for people in the room again. What is sense making to you? Okay, so the same exercise as a while ago. Let's have a go. 10 seconds. Type out what is sense making. I'll do the same. 10 seconds. Five seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Share. Okay, opposite. Connecting, it's rolling really fast, and you just read 2 to 3. Making sense of the plan, ability to identify patterns, very interesting. The ability to situate a network, feel the purpose thing in your gut, understanding. So it's a lot of understanding, a lot of comprehension, connecting the dots. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, let's look into what the Oxford bibliography says. So sense making or sense making are terms commonly understood as the process through which people interpret and give meaning to their experiences. Yeah, a lot of introspection, a lot of retrospection. Yeah. Next, Wikipedia. Okay. So we went for literature. Now we're going to go to open data. Editable data. Sense making is the process by which people give meaning to a collective experience. Yeah. So when you go through something, you effectively, as Kolb had shared, generalize what had just occurred for you to formulate or structure something that you envision to be, or something that you plan out to be, something that you're designing at the end of the day, right? Okay, so enough of me just sharing content. Let's have you in a breakout room. I'll give about a good 5 minutes and just talk to 3 to 4 individuals within that breakout room. What is service design to you and what is sense making? Let's try to stir up cross-pollinating. Is that the breakout room ready, Mark?
It is almost ready. And I will open the breakout rooms in just a second.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to share after the breakout rooms, that's when I will be sharing the insights that I had collected over the span of 2018 to early 2020.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I will just ask that that Howard, When the breakout room dialogue opens, you don't leave. So you can stay here in the main area. And
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms. So Howard, again, what's the prompt for everybody?
Share your initial insights
Yep.
around your interpretations of service design and sense making.
Perfect. Perfect. So just have a chat about service design and sense making. You got 5 minutes and you're going to be in a group of 3 or 4 people. So we'll see you guys back in about 5 minutes. Ready. We should be moving into the breakout rooms. All right. I'm going to have to bring back my breakout room people. Here we go. And Peter, hey, are you with us? Hey, Howard, you back?
All right. Yeah. Luckily, I was with Anupa. Okay,
Yeah.
so we have Peter.
Yeah. Hey, Peter.
Hey, how are you?
Very fine, thank you. It's snowing in Denmark.
Ah.
Oh, nice.
Finally.
How cold is it over there?
Not enough. It's about between -2 and +2. So it's kind of a not durable snow.
Okay, so have you decided to stay with us in the main room and not join a breakout room?
He came in a little bit late.
I just came in. I was late. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
Back to work.
Oh, no worries. We just sent them out to breakout rooms in a discussion to what is service design and what is service design or sense making at that. Would you like to share what are your interpretations of sense making or service design?
Sense making in the sense of making sense of data collection, or just in general the concept of sense making.
Yeah, what is it to you? So it's blue sky.
It depends on sense making. So if something makes sense, it's a question of whether it's reason it makes sense for one. So that's a logical sense making, or it can make something that makes sense for you is more like, okay, it makes sense now. I understand how you feel because we did this and this. Sense can be logical, but it can also be more intuitively, I think.
Or how about sense making a customer experience? Let's say like you're in a cafe and then you're sense making if do they have good customer service, or are they serving you properly?
It's funny. I just resaw Fjord, of course, the service design company, make this excellent video of explaining what is service design and use the cafes, the good old cafe example. So sense making there would be if it makes, as an interpreter, as a service designer, if it makes something that makes sense, that maybe somebody connects more to the brand or to the cafe if they get a special service and an email before, or people always recognize them and say their name, and then therefore they will come there because they have a different kind of rapport with the customers. So that makes sense. That people would choose that cafe instead of another, and also you can maybe collect a lot of data and make a lot of analysis on the data, but when it comes to it's also a lot to do with the human relation. So I would choose maybe a cafe where somebody's nice to talk to, even though they're very low tech or don't have special systems, or I can pre-order and all this and that. Because for me, for instance, it would be more important that I maybe could chat to that person or know that person in some way, or like that person. So the relation making would make sense for me to choose that place.
Very interesting. You pointed out relationships. So you value, in a sense, the relationships to a service that you've like logically sensed. Yeah. That is very interesting. So you would rather go to like a cafe who hangs out with you and seems that they know you.
Maybe a smaller place or whatever. I mean, if there's maybe someone I actually know who's, of course, if I know the owner, I would rather maybe go out of my way to go there. If it was a personal friend, of course, but if it's just any random cafe, I would use it if there was somebody who is nice to chat a little bit with. I would probably also go there just to have that, because I would always be able to, coffee is pretty good in Copenhagen. It's extremely expensive no matter where you go. So you can always get a good cup of coffee. So that extra thing would be the relation or the design, maybe of a cafe. So the experience of being there. Yeah. And these days I don't go out much, but when I did, I think that was what I chose from mainly was the atmosphere, which of course consists of music, interior design, and people, and the people who are there.
So Peter was just sharing that he would sense make if a cafe calls out his name, if he frequents that place, and to him it would make more sense to go to that cafe because he has an affinity to it. Yeah, that's proper retrospection on an experience, right? Thank you for sharing that, Peter. Let's carry on now with the presentation. I will ask, by the way, what occurred in those breakout rooms probably later if we have time in during the backstage. So for now, I'm just gonna go through 5 different cities that I had a sense-making exercise, service design sense-making exercise, and I would like to share with you all snippets of insights, and we could have further discussions later on. So the first place is Manila, where I'm originally from. This is my city, and the first thing that I've noticed while coming back home is youth manpower. So when you come to think about it, service design deals with both the client side and the employee side. Okay, so this occurred to me. It's like within the city, there's so much youth. It's like a conversation that I had with another designer during that service design conference at Dublin. They said like you could see all the young individuals within the city, while senior individuals tend to move out of the city, and it's just the same thing in Manila. Okay, there's so much new talent or the workforce. It's just sprawling with younger individuals. The next thing that I've noticed is that the private sector provides the resources for new infrastructure to occur within that city, within the city. I come from a developing country, which is the Philippines. It is, I'm not ashamed to say it, it is a bit corrupt. Hence, the allocation of the rightful, I'd say, resources that go to infrastructure, urban planning isn't there at all. So this is actually a new bridge. That's actually my grandmother, my sister, my wife, and my eldest daughter crossing over from one area to another, and the private sector had created it. I was blown, right? The next thing is that what I've noticed is that after almost above a decade, the city is still gridlocked in traffic. Manila has one of the worst traffic road traffics in Asia. I think we're in tandem with Indonesia, Jakarta, Indonesia. So there's lack of urban planning. Okay, the planning, the infrastructure was set out by the late dictator Marcos. That was 70s, 80s, I believe, mid 80s, when he flew off in exile in Hawaii. And it's still, it's relatively bad. Okay. The next thing is that there's a lack of the right policies to support the proper public services to be implemented. And the reason to that is in my country, if you try to change the law, they're up in arms at it. The local populace, they're up in arms at it because they think you're gonna try to tweak the law in your favor. So we have this kind of dilemma, okay, going on over there. So as a service designer, I see this and I go like, wow, it's just hard to go about change. The next thing that I've noticed is that the telco services over there, they have a stranglehold onto the masses, onto the customers at the end of the day. It's still relatively very bad. It's still very slow, and it costs extremely expensive money just to get, let's say, 4G at that time. Yeah, so it's still very backwards. This is me having a pint at the only, I'd say, the most modernized city within the Philippines. It's called the Global City. I have it on Evernote. You're gonna get links to that. And I was just thinking, like, this is against innovation. This is against modernization. This is against like a service system change. Yeah, but the city is growing because there's a lot of influx of individuals like myself, expatriates who remit money from home to home. And it's just sprawling with brand new condominiums and flats and whatnot. And with that, the service sector around it grows. So you'd have like spas, you have like parlors, restaurants, and whatnot. And yeah, this is like a mega city within already a mega city. That is Manila. Okay. Next, Tokyo. All right. So I had promised to my wife, this is pre-pandemic, by the way, that we're gonna take our kids to Tokyo Disneyland, hence Japan. And I'm always fascinated how the Japanese go about their design. So an observation of mine is that trains go everywhere. It's amazing, and I love it. We were at Shinjuku, and all we had to do was just go on their metro station. And next thing, we were close to like Disneyland Island or Tokyo Sea World, and we could just technically go everywhere. And this is brilliant, right? I mean, because just like Singapore, if you want to go from one area to another, you could have a go about it. I was speaking with a couple of Japanese designers who happen to be surfers as well. They even tried taking their surfboards within trains. It is possible, but it's troublesome. Okay. The next thing that I've noticed is that electronics make life easier, and this is one of the selling points of Japan, right? They're number one at electronics. They have that product design, whereas it makes your life easier. So personalized technology is rampant, and I had to delve onto this, and there's a caveat to it. Like, if you're familiar with hikikomori is a Japanese term for modern day hermits. It's like everything is accessible to them, that they need not go out. And their government provides allowances for them, so they could live off that as well. And that's just a byproduct of the system, of the service system or the product system at that. And just to carry on, it's services. You could technically get anything at a vending machine over there. The vending machines are just everywhere. So there's a lot of self-service behavior, consumer behavior. You could cook your own food. You could get a pack of cigarettes. You could get like energy drinks. Everything's there. You could even get time to charge your phone in the middle of the street. That's how much they love their self-service behavior and vending machines culture in Tokyo or in Japan at that. And then they have what I've observed is that they have a very strong gamification or game thinking culture over there, whereas they work hard, they work hard. So either they hit the pub right after which is kind of part of their ritual. You drink with the boss, or you game with the boss. So you could see all of these little game shops at Central Tokyo, and that's why they're really awesome at putting out Sega, Nintendo, and Sony PlayStations and whatnot. Next thing that I've noticed is the robotics culture. They're really fascinated with animatronics, for example, Godzilla Smackdown in Tokyo, which kind of works on top of gamification, but works kind of on top of like self-service. So the Japanese has this unique interaction with technology and how they engage with them. So as I said, it's very interesting. Whereas yep.
Howard,
Yep.
you're probably going to need to accelerate a little bit.
Yep.
I know you
All
love
right.
telling these stories, but I know you have a bunch of other cities you want to cover as well.
All right, cool. So the next thing is Beirut, okay, Lebanon, yeah. So city planning is at a low. They have beautiful architecture over there, but they have like this image right over here, this architecture that's riddled with bullets, apparently from the Civil War. So they have American architecture, they have modern architecture, they have even Roman ruins, but city planning is the low. I was a little bit in the shock actually, but the youth are planning for the future. This is Dima. She happens to be one of the leaders within their youth community of designers, and she's a service designer herself, and she had set out designing Beirut 2040 or 2050, so envisioning the future. So despite saying that it's urban planning is at low, architecture is at low, they have like Manila, young, talented, potential workforce. They're so creative. When I was having a couple of beers at Marmakhail, which is the party area, their songs transfer from Arabic to French to English, and this is that cross-pollination of creativity. There are a lot of Levants over here in Dubai who are very creative. Gentrification again happens by the private sector. It's because the lack of, I would say, the public sector. If you're familiar with relevant news right now, Beirut or Lebanon is having a crisis because of inflation. Okay, so to carry on, there's a bustling small shop scene over there, and I see that these individuals are providing services for the community, which is really, really awesome. It's kind of contrast over here within the UAE. It's because everything's just large malls, etc. So you don't tend to see that scene, that independent scene. The city is beautiful, but it's at the mercy of geopolitical landscape. I won't really touch into that, but they have their concerns. So this is what I believe affects service design as well within that city. I was freaked out when I saw the military over there. I was like, if I get into trouble within this city, I'm not going back home in Dubai. Okay, going back to Dubai now. All right. So Dubai's in a desert, and we have this local behavior of everything's being delivered to you. A pack of cigarettes, a bag of ice, anything you could think of, it's going to be delivered to your doorstep. And this is why food delivery services are booming over here. So we've got Talabat, we've got Deliveroo, the independent grocers, they also deliver. And this is a unique behavior over here. Another thing that I've noticed is that transportation here is reliable and sound. Within this picture over here outside my flat, you could see the tram, you could see the metro, you could see Uber, and you could see their local RTA, Road Transport Authority cab. So you could travel anywhere basically in Dubai. So it's good in that sense. Another thing that I've noticed over here is that the government is adopting service automation rapidly. They have a budget for which they want transformation to occur. They want automation to occur. So you have them exploring or experimenting with this touch point over here, which is a robot at the end of the day. And you could inquire about the services at, I believe, this is Dewa, which is the water utilities. Yeah. Next thing is the services tend to go from what you could really find outdoors to the inside. So this is me and my daughter playing within a gym. I'm running over time. I'm gonna just quickly go through this. We do have an international pool of talent over here, and I believe everybody is cross-pollinating each other to create certain services. Again, the city has that appetite for transformation, for becoming a oil-based or banking economy towards to an experience design economy, a service-oriented economy, tourism at the end of the day. Last one, Hong Kong. I'm just going to really quickly blaze through this because we're a little bit over time now. Okay, Hong Kong has a service design community that's very organic and very diverse. They're very welcoming. In fact, if you look down in the road, they do have implementations that address for the locals, and I believe for tourists like myself at that time, to look left, because it's that British style of road traffic, right? Else you can just get knocked off. Within this picture, you have individuals from Australia, Southeast Asia, East Asia. Okay, services are designed for mass engagements, right? So if you were to look at their transport system, it's double deck. You've got high-rise buildings, and effectively, what I've since make off to that is that service design is approached with density in mind. So there's limited land, so you have to effectively do what you can with what's given to you, outdated or modernized. And there's so many interactions with a certain degree of space. Next thing is that service design problems over there are relatively different from problems in other regions. So they have a very strong consumer behavior, and food is one of them. So what happens is that a problem for them would be, how do we effectively make food sustainable for a whole lot of individuals instead of just a few, okay? Another is the housing problems. So the way I see the housing problem, it's a domino effect. It's like a butterfly effect. In the event that an individual can't rent out a flat, they get access to not getting a job, they turn to drugs, they turn to a life of criminal activity, and this is actually occurring. This was one of the topics that was shared within the Service Design Hong Kong that I attended in 2019. Okay, so 5 key takeaways from the experiment. Service design is not only driven by the public sector, but the private sector as well. They either complement or disrupt each other. Service design is driven by human experiences, both CX and EX at the end of the day. Service design is driven culturally, and the understanding of cultural behaviors is ground zero for any service designer. It can be seasonal, economical, geographical, when you're driving for it, okay? When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. The reason for this is when I was going through in search for higher service designers, higher service design, mentors came about. People who would want to share more knowledge around it, just sharing. Service design is constantly evolving, and with that in mind, we must keep exploring sense making for its evolution at the end of the day. Next thing is service design is richly diverse. Okay, this is my conclusion. Sense making is an awesome approach to understanding service design's diversity. Okay, moving forward, a further step to sense making global service design is to become better service designers would be learning and the comprehension of global systems design, because services are part of ecosystems, right? And within that, the outcomes, I flew to Amsterdam, Design Thinkers Academy. I trained with Adam Lawrence, Mark Stickdrom, and I carried on with the Wednesday Web Jam. I experimented with them. This is an example of which finished innovation culture training and took up some systems thinking, because that's where I believe how you could be an effective service designer, or at least that's where it brought me to. Now, we
Howard,
were supposed. Yeah,
Howard,
okay.
yeah, I have a suggestion. I think it'd be good really just to pause here and have a conversation about your presentation. I think that would be really good. These are great examples of, I think, service design in a really interesting, from a really interesting perspective of these different cities that you've traveled to, and the observations or sense making that you've done there. What I wanted to propose is maybe I'll put a prompt. I've got a prompt to throw out there to kick off the conversation, and we'll do it just like what we did with the previous waterfall questions. So the prompt I have is, where do you see service design and sense making in the stories that Howard shared? So take about 5 seconds. We'll give you a few seconds for you guys to type something into the chat, and then I'll say go, and then you can hit enter, and we'll do the waterfall feedback again. And that'll kick off a few minutes of conversation that we can have here, and y'all can ask questions to Howard as well. And we'll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go ahead and hit enter. Okay. Sense making is important. Continually practice in our own practices. Yeah. Deciding to invest in Dubai. Yeah. Yeah. Lack of intentional design means that humans design to meet their own needs, right? Yeah. Howard and I were talking about that earlier. Is if it just happens that things come together to meet people's needs, is that design? Or is that just things happening? That's a fascinating part of this conversation, I think. Sense making leads to service designing. Yeah. Right on. Okay, cool. Adapting design towards cultural and societal strengths. Not every country and city have the same solution. Yeah, Mimp, that's great. So Howard, thank you so much for the insights there. I think this is a really rich area of conversation. Maybe we just open it up for people to raise questions to Howard, or ask questions to Howard, or make comments. Feel free to either raise your hand like this, or raise your virtual hand using the reactions in Zoom, and we'll call you out. Who's got a question for Howard or a comment? So Peggy asks how to help those who are responsible for design of cities to understand the foundation. Yeah, great question, Peggy. What do you think, Howard?
So traditionally, what we've done is to have a deep dive onto what are the concerns of the system, of a city, for a specific service. Let's say there is a concern for transferring your vehicle, okay, and you have to go through several processes of that. There are ways of capturing the voice of the customer. Sometimes they do it within service. Sometimes contact centers gather these information, and effectively consultants and analysts like myself, we gather these pain points of the customer, and then we do a review of the service in itself, and then we say that, okay, here are the pain points, and looks like it matches this part of the journey, and then we further evidence that through a service experience.
Cool. Yeah. Go ahead. Who had a question?
Who had a question? How important is service design in super traditional systems, academia, scientific research, where there's a lot of resistance against change, losing status? Okay, quite tricky. I would say it all depends in leadership. Okay. I was having a conversation with another experienced designer from Switzerland, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to digitalize public services over there, and they're very democratic in their approach, whereas they even vote if they were to implement jobs or what to do and whatnot. Here in the Middle East, we've got a monarchy, right? So if His Highness says that this is the mandate, then it occurs and everybody just follows suit. So going against that, it's not even in a discussion. But I could just relate with or I could just think about it within other organizations and structures. They may have that concern of pushing and pulling and resistant to change, and that occurs as well in organizational design. A lot in organizational design.
You know what? I want to just want to react to something that Bernard said. What if intentional human designing, right? So designers, service designers, whatever, intentional designing and humans designing things just for their own needs. What if they weren't mutually exclusive? Like, could you have a community of practice that is all about empowering people to design for themselves? I think that's a really brilliant. So we know that things happen. They're pulled together oftentimes in some of these examples that you showed because people have needs and they do things to meet their own needs. They change the city, for example, by themselves without having authorities or private sector companies come in and do that themselves. But what if you could actually amp that up, right? Just empower people to co-creation, essentially. It's an interesting approach, Howard.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of, I'd say, communities of practice that look into bettering services for a certain sector. And more often than not, you could see that within nonprofit organizations. Like in Hong Kong, there's Good Food Hong Kong, and they're looking into that holistic view and sustainable view of providing good food for those who can't afford, and how does that trickle down to individuals over here who really need that, right? You also have Impact Hong Kong, who caters to the rehabilitation of individuals who got impacted of that butterfly effect, who lost a home, lost that gig, trying to get back into the world. And you have this all around. I guess, like even at rehabilitation centers for those who are
Nice.
I think Manfred wants to.
I was going to say, Manfred.
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not a service designer, but I deal with businesses and leadership in businesses. What are there any typical parameters or indicators that one can use to identify that there is a lack of service design?
Okay, so I would shift into a little bit of systems design talk into this. So technically, there are services all around. It's just how healthy the services are. Like the prime example would be like in Manila, there are telcos that could provide for 5G, but they're crippling the market by asking them for more money. So believe it or not, there are services all around. It's just maybe they're unhealthier. Not unless you're like in the middle of the desert that you can't effectively touch base with a certain service that you want. But there are, especially these days, it's a matter of thinking how healthy a service system is and how unhealthy it is. So you could do a comparison to that. Probably where you live, this modernized city has all healthier services versus this rural city where you have probably rudimentary services. So that's the first thing, to identify how healthy a system is. The next thing is to identify how much of a service satisfaction do you get of that service? Does it meet the expectations of the time? Does it meet the expectations of the monetary value that you've shared? So a good way of looking into that is the Kano model. If you're familiar with the Kano model is once basic expectations of a certain value offering is already met, then it becomes meh. It's not that sexy anymore. It's not exciting anymore. But if it's still fresh out within offering, then you get excited about it. For example, like 15 years ago or 12 years ago, if you have Wi-Fi in a cafe, then everybody would be stoked at it. They were like, wow, this cafe is really futuristic, and they have Wi-Fi, right? So their service is really good with their coffee and whatnot. You could work over there. But nowadays, it's like the basic expectations is already met. So within that approach of service, it's not sexy anymore. So yeah.
We have just about 2 more minutes, and then we'll have to do a few end of session announcements. Does anybody else have a question or a comment that you can either just speak up or raise your hand or throw something in the chat? It's a really interesting conversation for sure. Who's got a thing? Who wants to share something?
So Ivan had shared that it's very important to educate leadership and highlight the risk involved 100%, because there's a monetary value equated to services. So how much you lose out or within the pre-existing service, or how much you lose out on that opportunity space of the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, how risk of not applying human-centric design or understanding the service outcome and what it's going to be, it's a risk. If you develop something just based on technology or based on one's need, not understanding the holistic picture on the system, how this integrates in the whole structure, the risk is going to be higher and the cost is going to be higher, and the time to develop something or change is much bigger. So yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Okay.
All right. Well, good.
Any last questions? No?
Yeah, Howard, I just want to thank you for bringing this subject to us. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about design. We've had some service designers here. Adam Lawrence was with us.
Yeah.
But this was like really a focus in on service design and on an important component of that, which is the sense making. I love the way that you shaped the conversation around traveling to different cities and comparing, a type of sense making of those cities and related that to service design, or maybe in some cases service not design, just service, right? Services that come together. So excellent conversation. Just remind everybody that we're going to be going backstage here shortly. But before we do that, that will be at the top of the hour when we stop the YouTube broadcast. But before that, preview of next week's session. We're getting towards the end of the year. We have a couple of more sessions before we take a break at the end of the year. And our next one, next Wednesday, same time, same place, is with Sandra Lutz-Brown and Anna Merwenda. And they're going to be talking about how design thinkers keep their brains in check. And Sandra, I think you're here with us. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about that session?
Yes, I am. Hi, Mark. Thank you. So Anna and myself, we're not design people. We are leadership development people. So we are often asked to design learning experiences for those in charge of people and processes in organizations. And we would like to share a bit of you what are some of the hot topics that we are finding in our design work and often asked to integrate in our design work for leaders so they can really acquire the skills that they need to be successful. And that's all around understanding the brain, how the brain is wired, how it is designed, and how it impacts. as in work. So we'd like to share with you some quirky insights into how the history of designing leadership development has evolved, a few quirky facts about the brain as such, and then have an interactive moment in Breakout where you can share your own best practices, how your brains are affected in your work and how you keep them in check.
Cool. Love to learn about how my brain works. I've never have any idea how that works, but this is going to be a fascinating subject next week. So join us for that, everybody. And just kind of a little bit of flashback to last week. You may remember that Manfred and Cecile, is that right? Did a session on followership, and we have a roundtable conversation that you can sign up to in December. And Manfred, do we know when that is going to be?
That is next week.
Well, the link is in the chat, so there's probably information in that link. So if you're interested, yeah,
either Tuesday or Friday.
Okay, great, awesome. So join that if you're interested in having a discussion and follow-on chat about followership from last week's session, and inviting you guys to join us if you want to join us for LinkedIn, Facebook, friend us everywhere. Those links will be put in the chat here shortly. And then finally, here's the team of volunteers that make this Wednesday Web Jam thing work. We're a happy family. If you'd like to join us, reach out to us. And then finally, we're going to pass the hat around virtually. If you would like to give us $10 or so, we have a goal of raising the money that will help us fund our operations, things like the Zoom and MailChimp and various different things that we use to make this work. It's a nonprofit. It's not even an official nonprofit, but we do this all by volunteer work, and this is just to cover our expenses. So we'd love to get a cup of coffee from you if you get a chance. And with that, I'm going to stop the YouTube broadcast. Howard, I'd like to thank you again for your awesome presentation and bringing the subject to us. And we're officially going backstage. Awesome session.
Thank you, Mark.
Oops, I don't want to end the meeting. I just want to stop the YouTube.
Ooh.
Okay, let's see.